Okay, we're going to look at drawing. And one of the challenges with industrial design is getting those wonderful ideas onto paper or in some other format that can be shared with a group. And of course, digital media is very important, and we use it a lot. And I'll show you some examples of that later. But good old-fashioned drawing is very important. And I just wanted to quickly go over some drawing skills. And of course, you can use paper and pencil. And we'll talk about color another time, whether it be oil pastels or colored pencils or markers or whatever. But I'd like to work with charcoal because you get good contrast, an excellent range of tonal values, so you can go really dark and really light, and that makes a two-dimensional drawing pop out of off the paper. So paper has different types of tooth, different texture to it, and I have a couple here, different types, which don't show up well, but this happens to be one I had handy, so I'll use this. And with charcoal, I often use a charcoal pencil, but typically willow charcoal or vine charcoal is common. It's very erasable, so it's a great way to start if you'd like. And then compressed charcoal of various forms, which is very helpful for all sorts of things. But I'll use this charcoal pencil. Again, vine charcoal would be a more traditional way to start this. But the first thing we see with charcoal is I can go really dark. And I can get a good range of tonal values. And there's a lot of ways to produce this. And one, because this is really an accelerated little lesson, is to use a blending stump. And blending stumps, here's a new one and a used one. They tend to get beat up. They have different tips on them as they wear, but this lets me get great control of the tonal value. So if you notice, this is really good for doing flesh tones and such, and you can see here I can get really good tonal values. And I'll show you an example of this later. And then when this is loaded with charcoal, I can actually draw with this too. And remember, charcoal is actually not drawing like with graphite. It's putting charcoal dust into the weave and the woof of the paper. So it's embedding this. It tends to make a mess. You need to spray it with fixative to get it to seal in place. So it's not sticky like graphite, but it lets you do a lot of neat things. So those are some of the tools I've needed. Erasers are common, but you can use all kinds of things. I often will use plastic erasers when I'm trying to remove a lot of things, and those are basically the tools involved. So there's not too much as far as that goes. Other techniques, just very quickly, is to make a circle, for example, or even, let me just start with a straight line. To draw straight lines, if you're right-handed, it's much easier to draw from left to right. So if you're trying to draw this way, and I'll kind of exaggerate this a bit, very crooked line. So what you do, of course, is you turn the paper, and I can get straight lines. Okay. And in developing ideas, during the process of ideation, you don't want to be encumbered by straight edges of these kind of things and French curves and all that. You want to draw, and draw quickly. Then another technique is to make circles. If you're not using a circle template, is simply to take a pencil and your charcoal and make your own little compass. And I've got some things in the way here, but this will work. And I get a nice circle. So that's a very helpful technique. Another helpful technique, I call it scribble sketching, because it's very hard to draw certain curves and circles. As you can, and I'll kind of exaggerate this. If I draw a circle, traditionally you would draw two halves of circles. But let me just kind of exaggerate this. What I can do is scribble in what I think is a circle. Okay, and this is purposely scribbled. And then it gives me sort of, your eye knows when you've got a circle. So I can now just scratch in a circle, and I can get a pretty good circle by using the scratch technique. And the same is true with, and I'm kind of making this heavy so it shows up better on the video. The same is true for a straight line. If you can't draw a straight line, if your lines look like this, you can scratch in a line. And just using little scratch techniques. And that helps you. And of course that's good for curved surfaces. So if I want to make some kind of interesting curved surface like this, and so, and sometimes you can hit that right off the first time, but you can go back and kind of scribble in the shape that you want. So you can just kind of work with these scribbles, and especially if you go light, you can work out the shape that you want, and then you hit it when you're done, and you pull out the curve that you want. So it's a really helpful process. It's also helpful if you're doing figures, and again, you can draw figures by scribbling them in. If you keep it small, this works out pretty good, and you can do all kinds of gestures really quickly, and you scribble them in until you're generally happy with it, because you know when the proportions are wrong. So you can use a lot of the scribble technique for a lot of things, is to do quick studies. The other technique too that's really important with charcoal and really helpful is nothing in the real world has these heavy contour lines. So if you draw this shape and this is some kind of box thing, well, you're not going to see this in the real world. So this is just forced perspective, which I'm not going to go over perspective here, but it's interesting. Anyway, that's not how things look in the real world. What you want to work with is the difference between the value in the object and the background value. So these contour lines need to disappear. So I'll do this really quick. I don't want to see fat contour lines. And again, I'm doing this with a heavy hand, and I'm not doing it with vine charcoal. So I can, in fact, what I would do is erase. I'll use a neat eraser. I can lighten up that forward line there and lighten these lines up. And then I can use my blending stump and get these surfaces worked out very quickly. Then I can use a very cheap eraser template. In my case, a Post-it note. There's nice little metal eraser templates you can get. I just don't have one right here. And I can clean up those lines. So this is what you want in your surfaces. You do not want the heavy contour lines. You want these ranges of values. And of course, you can work black on white. You can work with different backgrounds, and you can paint on charcoal dust or use black paper or colored paper and such to give you the effects you want. Those techniques are really helpful in drawing ideas. Again, especially in a public setting, charcoal is good because you get the big bold lines. That's compressed charcoal, and in this case, it's really, let's use this. It comes off nicely. Or not, that's vine charcoal. I'm sorry, vine charcoal. Compressed charcoal. If you use compressed charcoal, and use a bigger stick here, what you want to do is check and make sure it's flattened. See if you can see that. Take a piece of scrap paper and make sure the edge is flat, and then you can get large amount of charcoal put down, and it picks up the tooth of the paper, so you get a nice texture, which is good. Because remember, you're working with texture also. It's the other commodity in your toolkit. So those are some basic techniques, and with those techniques you can do a lot of things. So let me very quickly do an eye project, draw an eye, and I'll do it with a charcoal pencil. And again, you can use traditionally you'd use vine charcoal because you get the strong contour lines and they're easy to erase. But I'm going to use compressed charcoal, or the pencil, and I usually keep several pencils available. And here we're working, of course, with charcoal. You can add color later, and later we'll look at color and color theory and getting highlights right. And what is very nice with modern technology is I can take the charcoal drawing, put it into Photoshop, and use a blended layer, and I can overlay color onto my drawing, and it keeps the value that I've established with the charcoal. So I can get my values established with charcoal and get the color from Photoshop, and that's really helpful, and I'll show that sometime too. And again, the goal here, this is not final rendering. In this day and age, final rendering is photorealistic digital rendering. So this is more for ideation. And let me just show you an example of very techniques with an eye. With the eye, let me draw it. I want to do this quickly, so I'll get the upper lid and the lower lid. This is not traditional art school where you draw the orb and such, but I'm just going to do this just to express what you can do with charcoal. And I'm going to have the eye look up. So I drew a little tear duct, and if you don't get this outside flesh right, you'll never get this working right. And here I'm going to scribble in the iris, and I'm going to try to exaggerate this so you can see. And I'm going to kind of purposely doing it imperfectly. When you do an iris and the pupil, you should use a circle template. Okay, I'm purposely not, and I'm purposely getting a little rough here to get what I want. Okay, and here's the pupil, and that's going to be concentric. And I'll put a highlight like this. And I'm scratching this in. I'm going to try to go really fast. Again, the right technique is to use a circle template. Okay, but I'm not going to. And then what I have here is the basic contours for the eye, and I can do some things quickly. In terms of managing the mess, it's nice to work with the lighter values first before you go really dark with the pupil and the iris, because then you get a lot of charcoal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down some charcoal. Let me put a lower lid in here. Okay, and I'm putting charcoal into the paper, and I'm removing it, and I'm smearing it with the blending stump. So that's what I'm doing, and let me just lay some charcoal in here. Again, I'm just using a charcoal pencil, but this would be better done with, again, vine charcoal. Or just lay some compressed charcoal. So, again, what I'm doing is I'm not trying to push this into the paper. I'm just trying to get charcoal dust on the paper. All right, so I'll do that. And tear duct, I'll need a highlight for the tear duct. And then, as it turns out, I'll have a shade line caused by the eyelashes, so I'll just kind of put that in there. Okay. And then I'll take my blending stump. This one happens to be loaded with charcoal already. This is a brand new one. I'll use this. Sometimes you can even load it up so you, oops, see if that's showing all right. There we go. And I'll just start blending this in quickly. And what I want is, I want to go from light to dark. And you're essentially, you want to exaggerate it because you want to suggest the spheroid nature of the eye. And I'm going to lay some more charcoal in there. Let's see, medium. Okay, lay more charcoal in and bring it out. And here, of course, you're working with texture, and the eye should be very smooth. And on the industrial design side of things, as it turns out, the eye is the most sensitive to tactile response. It's about 10 times more sensitive than the tips of your fingers. So the cornea is a real good way to feel things, although that's not certainly recommended. So I'm bringing this out. The only thing that's going to be white is the highlight on the pupil. And okay. And then I'll just go ahead and get around the tear duct. Okay. And I can even get some value on this lower lid. Okay. Now I'm going to take, for the iris, I'm going to get some striations in there, which I don't have to do, but I will. The human eye is an amalgam of all sorts of colors. It's a really, if you look closely, it's quite unsightly. But let me just get something in there. And this is going to be darker. Just don't get the highlight. And I can establish this a little better, get some okay, and again, if you actually look at that, there's all sorts of things. So if you do photorealistic stuff, this doesn't quite work. And that's going to be all black in there. And I'm going to use some compressed charcoal. I'll get the shade line for the eyelashes. And actually I'm going to wait a little while for the pupil itself because that's so dark. And pick up some of this. It's a little too dark. Okay. And again, trying to be fast here. Okay. And another technique is eyelashes. Great with charcoal. And there's, let me just, and you need irregularity. Let me just get some kind of background here. A little higher. But this is a good use for charcoal as well, because what I can do with charcoal, if I take a sharp charcoal pencil, I can get these really nice, by lifting up on the charcoal, I get a nice change from heavy to thin at the end, and you just kind of practice this, and maybe it'll show up better here. So I get these nice hairs presented, like so, and okay, and let me just do this. And the key here, of course, is to keep the highlight. If you don't have the highlight, then it's not going to look three-dimensional. So let me get the. But you can see charcoal lets you work with this really good range of tonal values. Really good for that. And well, that's probably enough of that for now. And for this. And I can use some compressed charcoal down here. Give it a little, bring it to life a little bit. And no. So I'll stop right there. But there's an eye quickly done in charcoal, and it's showing you just some techniques and the wonderful aspect of the tonal value that you can achieve with charcoal. And with that, those wonderful ideas in your mind can be transmitted to paper, shared with others, and you can use the powerful quality of group dynamics to come up with better and better designs, unencumbered by even electricity. Thank you.